Hey everyone, it's Anne, and I'm here to tell you about a whole bunch of new recordings we have scheduled. We need your questions for them. One is with the author of a book about the connection between male grievance culture and climate change, and specifically like denying climate change, and basically why are men less likely than women to believe in climate change. Super interesting, but we need your questions to dig deeper into that. We're also working on one about hoarding with someone who grew up in a family where hoarding was a major problem. So, what do you want to ask someone who lived through that? What do you notice about the hoarding content we consume on TV and social media? Do you want advice on negotiating a hoarding situation in your own life? There's so many directions you can take that one. And then for some slightly lighter fare, we're going to do a deep dive on Gwyneth Paltrow with the author of the new juicy biography. And we've got an episode on birding culture. We're going to talk about food trends. So, like, what are you seeing in restaurants all over the place? What are you seeing in recipes that are coming out? Again, take that in any direction you want. And we're also going to explore hanging out and what makes a good or a bad hang. And we're still taking your requests for book recs for our fiction concierge episode. As always, you can submit your questions, ideas for future episodes, and prompts for the Ask Anna Anything segment at tinyurl.com/culturestudypod, or check the show notes for a link. Okay, thanks. Enjoy today's show. This is the Culture Study Podcast, and I'm Anne Helen Peterson.
I'm Alyssa Morris. I'm a literary agent at Trellis Literary Management, and I'm the author of the Romancing the Phone Substack.
So you joined us last year for one of our most popular episodes ever, which is entitled, Is Book Talk Actually About Reading? And first of all, if people haven't listened to that, it's, you don't need to have listened to that before listening to this episode, but if you like this episode, definitely go back and find that one. But Alyssa, you've had some professional news since then. Can you tell me about your new job?
I have, yeah. So I have been working as a literary agent. I was previously consulting, helping agents find romance and romantasy novels from the Kindle Unlimited space. And now I am doing it all for myself. And it's been very exciting and exhilarating.
Tell me if I get this wrong, but my memory is that you met my agent who is at Trellis, founded Trellis with some other agents, at an event that I did in Austin. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. It was an event for the 19th News, and Allison and I ended up sitting next to each other at a table, and it changed my life. So thank you.
I love it. I love it so much. So do you have, this is a big question. It comes from Melody. Do you have a thesis on the current state of reading culture?
Oh my God. Can you have a singular thesis about the current state of reading culture?
Or maybe like, what's changed this year? Like, what are you feeling in the air about changes in like the conversation?
I feel like the temperature on the conversation has gotten turned up a lot recently. It feels like everything is operating at a low simmer and just like ready to tip over into an active boil at any moment, from things that can feel trivial. And then it just spirals into this huge conversation. And I think a lot of that is happening on Threads, where the temperature of book conversation is very hot. It's also happening on TikTok a lot. It's happening because of AI. I think that AI has changed the tenor of a lot of these conversations. And I think book talk has been around for long enough that it's like to a point where people are having bigger conversations about what is happening over there now that it is such an established force in the marketing channels and sales for traditionally published novels across the board.
Right. Like before, even like, I don't know, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, it felt like a niche, like almost guerrilla marketing. And now I think it feels so central to the conversation. Like if you don't have people on your team who are very, very clued into what's happening on Book Talk, like forget about it. And the Threads point is so interesting to me because I think other people will recognize this experience. I'm scrolling through Instagram and Instagram will highlight a thread. Here's a thread you might want to check out, right? And it's almost always, and I don't know how, like, all of the information that Meta has about me, for me, it's almost always about books. And it's always like, hot take. And then it's like not really a hot take, right? But I do think that the platforms themselves are also heightening these conversations. Does that make sense?
Definitely, yes. And I try my best not to click on those darn threads things in my Instagram, but they get me every time. And I click over
I
into
know
threads
every
and read the
time.
hot take.
The other thing I get a lot of is like people's airplane stories. And I'm like, this is just outrage bait. Like, this is just
Yeah.
people
It
having
feels
a
worse
strong
than
opinion.
Twitter was somehow. Like, because it is very algorithmically driven in a rage bait kind of way.
Yeah. So today's episode is basically a grab bag about all things book culture. And we're going to talk about books as status symbols, like shelves and that sort of thing, celebrity book clubs, seemingly random books that go viral on TikTok, and so much more. And then for our Ask Ann Anything segment, we have a question about book clubs and about specifically about like the future of someone's book club that I think is going to be really fun to try to answer. So we're going to start with a question from Helena.
What is happening with reading as a class and status symbol? I have been recently boggled to learn about bookshelf wealth and that all the influencers slash models slash actresses are carrying around books as accessories and starting book clubs. How is this tied into book talk and social media? How is this tied into progressive beauty standards and race? Why is everyone critiquing all the Iron Flame and Romanticy girlies for, quote, overconsumption of books? Is this not just book collecting, and are people just mad because young women are doing it?
Oh my gosh. So Helena gave us some great descriptions to start with, but can you flesh out this description of bookshelf wealth? Because I think if people haven't been exposed to the how it's manifested on social media, they might not understand exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I would just want to say this is an incredible question. We could probably spend the whole podcast just on
Totally.
this question if we wanted to. There's so much to unpack here. I feel like it relates a little bit to a question we answered last time about someone who said people did not believe her when she told them how much she read, and there was a lot of judgment about reading too much. And I
Yes.
think this all kind of ties into that, which I've been noticing it everywhere ever since we had that conversation. There's just this disbelief that people could be reading this much. But I think with bookshelf wealth, on social media and especially on TikTok, what it plays out as is influencers who are sitting in front of their perfectly styled bookshelves full of all of their collected books, whether they're special editions, whether they're every edition of a book they love. They have this perfectly styled out background to show that they are a book collector. And it plays out in the romantasy space with these special editions where some readers, especially some big creators on Book Talk, display their books pages out because sprayed edges are such a big part of the collectible romantasy book that they want to show all the sprayed edges, which is how
Oh,
medieval manuscripts were sometimes displayed in medieval
right,
libraries. And I
right.
think that's an incredible thing that we've cycled back around to. So
Totally.
people have these beautiful walls where you can't even tell what the books are because you're just seeing the designs on the sprayed edges, which is fascinating. But even
Hmm.
in, in the literary space and the interior design space, we're just seeing where people's styled bookshelves that are supposed to feel so personal are this indicator of their personal taste, their status as an intellectual. It has become this really important aesthetic signifier. And I think it ties into a lot of what we're seeing with these celebrity influencer book clubs as well. I think reading as a class and status symbol has become something that's tied to the notion of brain rot. People are
Yeah.
spending too much time on the internet and frying their attention spans. They're watching TikToks about ballerina cappuccina, and it's become a status symbol to be offline. So books
Yeah,
are
yeah,
a really
yeah.
good symbol about how you're offline. You can process
Yeah.
large amounts of information. And there's all kinds of online
But
guides for
then
how to unrot your
demonstrate,
brain, and they all include reading. Yes,
but
it's
also
ironic that one of the
demonstrate.
only places to perform this is online.
Yes. I That's such a good point, and I think it's also connected to something that we're seeing across the arts, really, which is like you have this big divide between like a lot of people are consuming in en masse in digital form. So like I read all of my romances in Kindle form, right? So I don't even own the physical book. But then there's also this fetishization of collector's items as books as status symbols in some way. And you see this in like, I think there's a newfound profound interest in collecting physical media like
Yes.
DVDs, Criterion Collection,
Yes.
LPs, actual CDs and tapes, right? Like having some sort of ownership that also speaks to like your fandom, but also you as a person who values this sort of thing. Like it's like a step up. And obviously, the understanding favorite books as like an indicator of taste. Like I think back on when we first started making Facebook profiles, and it was like very important what books you listed as your favorite books. Like,
Yes.
but you weren't putting, it wasn't aesthetic in that way. And now, because like listing is no longer enough, you
Yeah.
need to
You need to
demonstrate and
demonstrate.
manifest it, right? This,
Yes.
okay, reminds me of a thread that got forwarded to me in my Instagram account yesterday, which was about a critique of reading, like that reading is privileged.
Oh no.
Have you seen this? Have you seen
No,
this?
I have not.
I understand this understanding that like leisure time is a privilege, but actually even people who work a lot still have leisure time, right? They get to
Yeah.
decide what they want to do with their leisure time. So deciding to read, I don't think that's a privilege.
No, we have libraries, and libraries are like ever more accessible to people. Like you can check out books from the library onto whatever device you have.
So that part I think is more tied up in the second part of Helena's question, which is that this like understanding of overconsumption, that like this needs to be critiqued in some way. Why does it need to be critiqued? Probably because a lot of women are doing it.
Yeah, well, and I think where this gets complicated is that like a lot of the influencer and celebrity book clubs we're seeing crop up are sharing more conventionally literary picks. But would those people consider reading romantasy as a sign of brain rot? Is like reading a lot of romantasy actually signifying to these people that you're the right kind of offline intellectual? Like there's an interesting mix of ideas at play there. But I do think the complaints about overconsumption related to romantasy are rooted in misogyny. And it's just like the same argument we've seen about romance readers in a new form. Like it doesn't die, it just comes back. And now it feels like maybe there's so many indie romance bookstores, we can't critique just regular down the middle romance anymore. We understand that that's a misogynist like complaint, but romantasy is like, it feels like the new place where we can have these kind of arguments about is this the right kind of reading?
Right. And do you think it has to do with the fact that there's fantasy at play? Like, is that it? Or I know that some people have talked about the feeling that they get after gorging on a romantasy, because sometimes that is the feeling that it produces, because it is so effective in enthralling you with the plot. Like the payoff isn't exactly what you want it to be. Like you feel a little like woozy afterwards.
It's just like fully escapist. And it ties back into this notion that we've been fighting forever of like a guilty pleasure, where like, if it makes you feel good, why should you be guilty about it?
This is where I think it's a little bit more complicated, because I think sometimes people don't feel good after reading it because they stay up later than they want to stay up. Like it's like it's producing addictive behaviors that they don't necessarily want to embrace, even though they love the feeling of absorptive reading. It's like too much absorptive reading. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I've definitely had that, and I had that with various romantasy series where I've been like, I want to stop, but I cannot. And I wish I had a little bit more control, the same way that I feel about like, why can't I stop swiping on TikTok,
Definitely. But it's interesting because I think romantasy has also like driven most of these big changes in the culture of physical media we're seeing in books and romance in the past few years. So like sprayed edges have completely transformed what book publishing looks like in 2025. They became this sort of niche thing that has now become like almost essential to making a book, not just in romantasy anymore, but like if you have a big release in romance, you really need to have sprayed edges for it to stand out. They're calling them spreadges now. What a word. Incredible. Spreadges. And so I think that that's really interesting that they're coming from this just like wholly absorbing addictive side of the space that like hasn't traditionally been where collector culture is at play.
Totally. Right. Like it's not like people aren't seeking out like vintage, like first edition collectors.
Well, it is very hard to get your hands on the like original covers of the Court of Thorns and Roses books. And they're like quite ugly, but they're very expensive if you find them on the internet.
How much of this do you think is a crossover from what I think of as like the leading figure in this sort of contemporary collector culture, which is Taylor Swift with the
Mm-hmm.
CDs and like reintroducing this sort of collector culture to a new generation of girls. Do you think that that's true?
Yeah, I mean, they just announced, Sarah J. Maas just announced that she has like a merchandising brand deal that's about to start, which means that there's probably going to be like ACOTAR merch sold at a lot of places. And that feels very Taylor Swiftian to me to have these
Well,
new merch drops.
and especially to like take control of the merch
Mm-hmm.
yourself because there's been so much like off-brand
Yes.
Etsy
Yes. And
like
now she has an actual
yeah.
brand and she's going to be able to own what is being produced about A Court of Thorns and Roses. But I'm very interested to
Yeah.
see what that ends up looking like and how broadly it extends.
Today's episode is sponsored by OneSkin. Have you heard about OneSkin scalp serum, OS1 hair? I've been using the OneSkin various facial products, like especially the moisturizing lotion and the under eye cream for, I don't know, many months now. I'm obsessed. And now I'm using this scalp serum. The thing about OneSkin is they have this patented OS1 peptide that is scientifically proven to target aging at the cellular level. It's what powers their skin and sun care, and now it's targeting age-related hair loss and thinning, which I definitely have. Here's what other people are saying about the scalp serum. Quote, "My hair has never felt this thick and full, and my scalp feels healthier than ever." One customer even wrote, "I have tried everything for hair growth, and finally I'm getting a response from my hair." OneSkin scientists did a clinical study showing that after 6 months, participants had significantly thicker and denser hair. So if you're ready to give OS1 hair a try, you can get 15% off your first 3-month supply with code CULTURE at oneskin.co. So the way that this works is you get this little roller thing. I don't know how to describe it other than like it feels almost like sticky. It's making your scalp receptive to the serum. So you put it on after you shampoo and it doesn't make your hair like gross or weighed down. It's not like, I don't know, when I was a kid and I would put mousse in my hair. That's not what it feels like. OneSkin was founded in 2016 by an all-woman team of scientists with PhDs in skin regeneration, stem cell biology, immunology, and bioinformatics. After testing the efficacy of more than 900 so-called anti-aging peptides, they developed the OS1 peptide, the first ingredient to reverse skin's biological age by reducing the accumulation of senescent cells, a key driver of skin aging. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin with 15% off using code CULTURE at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code CULTURE. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support the show and tell them that we sent you. Today's episode is brought to you by ZBiotics. So there's this product called pre-alcohol. In our family, we like it so much that we fight over who gets to use it. Melody, you have a story though.
Yeah, I had my birthday party a few weeks ago and we went
Uh-huh.
to a drag show and, we're all getting to be of a certain age and I had a whole box of ZBiotics pre-alcohol in my purse and I just passed it out. And then we all drank responsibly because, again, we're of a certain age. But, we had a few drinks. It was a fun time. The next morning we were all texting each other like, I feel totally fine. My friends were up and at it with their kids. I got up early with my dog and just had a really great day.
ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's a buildup of this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for rough days after drinking. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. So before your next barbecue, before you are out watching the sunset at the beach, before you're going to a drag show for your birthday, don't forget your ZBiotics pre-alcohol. Drink one before drinking and wake up feeling great and ready to take on the next day and all that summer has to offer. Go to zbiotics.com/culture study to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use culture study at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/culturestudy and use code culturestudy at checkout for 15% off. Okay, so next question is about book influencing. I cannot wait to talk about this. This is from Micah.
I'd love a discussion on celebrity book clubs like Oprah and Reese and others, and book influencers on various social media as the source of tastemaking today, in contrast to previous generations relying more on book critics. How does that affect what we read and how we read? The tracking, TBRs, challenges. I was a teenager during the initial rise of BookTube before BookTok and the boom of YA publishing, specifically dystopian YA. And it's been fascinating to see those mostly millennial, older influencers get older online. Some turn into adult readers and some stick with YA almost exclusively. What is this phenomenon?
I feel like there's two questions here because there's the question about the book clubs, right? The celebrity book clubs and what's going on with them. And then there's the question, which I also find super interesting, which is about the millennial book influencers getting older. So maybe let's start with the celebrity book clubs.
Yeah, this is a timely question because a lot of what we're seeing now is that celebrity book clubs aren't really moving the needle like they once were.
Really?
Yeah. So like, you know, they still drive a lot of success, but it's not like a given that if you're a celebrity book club pick, your book is going to do amazingly well. And it's because they've lost a lot of this market share, if you will, to influencers on various social media platforms who have a lot of power these days. But a good example of this is that recently Reese's Book Club selected the new Emily Henry book, Great Big Beautiful Life, as their pick. I doubt they were introducing any of their readers to Emily Henry for the first time.
Yeah.
Their selection didn't make or break that book. So why are they making that selection, right? Like they're trying to piggyback on the existing power of Emily Henry.
My thinking, and I need to like look into the fine print on this, but at least historically, part of what makes Reese and her team pick a book
is film production.
Is that when they pick it, is they're optioning it.
Yes.
Right? So my thinking with that book is that was how they got the option.
I mean, I think that's definitely possible, but it just feels like more and more they are not discovering anything new for readers. They're making picks that are very expected. And so I think we're seeing influencers as the main source of tastemaking because there are so many places to find them, whether you're on BookTok, whether you're on Bookstagram, whether you're on Reddit, which like really has a lot of interesting power these days. And I think some of what we've seen because of that is an explosion in the popularity of genre fiction. Because when there are more tastemakers, you can find recommendations that are much more tailored to your specific taste rather than the like more general tastes that are broadly appealing of a national book club. And I think we can see this in like the rise of mainstream monster romance. We can see it in the rising popularity of dark romance, of cozy fantasy. These are all subgenres that feel incredibly niche, but they've exploded because you can find people who are like guides to them to help you navigate this new to you subgenre.
Right. Whereas Oprah historically, and now I think Reese and Read with Jenna, their picks were essentially like, here's a good middle brow pick. Like it wasn't necessarily like the stories were different until the shifts in Oprah's book club that happened in the later iterations of it. They were not what we think of as like literary. I'm putting that in quotes on purpose, but like they weren't like doing experimental stuff. Like they
were what we call book club fiction now.
Yes, book club fiction. And like I sometimes battle my own internalized taste hierarchies that when I see that a book has been chosen by Read with Jenna, like whatever, by a book club, not Oprah's book club anymore because she, I think, picks very different things now, but by Jenna or by Reese. And I'm like, oh, this is just going to be like fine. And so I do think that maybe some people who have been burned by that feeling, they're like, yeah, that was fine. Like, I'm not going to remember that. They are gravitating towards these more specialized recommendation engines that are essentially influencers, right? Yeah. And we got another question actually that we didn't include that I loved that was like, these Gen Z influencers are smarter on tropes than like anyone in my like 300 level English class. Like they can identify how tropes are working, how narrative shifts are working, point of view, all of these things really, really effectively. And maybe that's how we should actually be teaching these concepts in schools.
Yeah, that's fascinating. They're thinking about it so deeply. This also made me think about the AI summer reading scandal that happened a few months ago, where several newspapers ran a list of summer reads that was AI generated and the books didn't exist. They were all made up. And it just shows you that like newspapers don't have book critics anymore. Like the influencers have had to step in and fill this space partially because there are very few people performing this job because no one will pay them to do it. And one thing I've noticed is that influencers are acting more like journalists in order to fill the gap. Like on Book Talk, a genre of video I'm seeing more and more is just sharing lists of upcoming releases in different genres and their release date, which is like the kind of thing you would have gone to a magazine for in the past.
Right. Because, and some of this too is, I think, like the massive destruction of like web traffic when it comes to something like, you know, there used to be the most anticipated list. Like if you Googled summer reading lists, like the first 15 results would be like Vogue summer reading lists, like New York Magazine, like all of these different things. And now people just get the AI summary, or they don't even use Google for that sort of thing, right? Like they are searching Reddit summer reads or they're searching TikTok in order to find those things. And I don't think that like, it's not the death of the critic. It's different brand of criticism.
Yeah.
I think some people think that TikTok, it's only positive.
Yeah, when I find the people on TikTok to be more willing to be negative a lot of the time. Like they're not scared to dislike a book. They will post a pan in a way that a lot of other social media networks are much more like they will only post about their 5-star reads, or there's this like sort of etiquette that on TikTok I don't think as many of the big creators abide by. You know, like the format of a yes, no, maybe video. They have to say no to things and be like, ugh, no, I didn't like this one.
Right. What have you seen happening with millennial influencers who gained their popularity on something like BookTube or like Bookstagram? Like what is happening to them? What are you seeing?
I mean, Bookstagram is still going strong, I would say. And BookTube too. A lot of the Book Talk people also have YouTube channels, which is funny because their Book Talk videos are already long and then their BookTube videos are like 40 minutes long. So I can't imagine who is watching that much of their content, but it is, I mean, in a lot of ways, the only long form criticism of this kind of work that is available out there. Right. But it's interesting because this all ties into like where genre publishing has gone, because I think what we've seen is that publishers are buying less and less YA. It's not as big of a genre as it once was. And a lot of that energy and work has been funneled into romance and romantasy. And so if you look at a lot of the romantasy editors that the Big Five have hired in recent years, a lot of them are coming from YA publishing. So there's been this big shift of readers who were reading a lot of YA before who are now reading a lot of romantasy because that's the genre that's sort of hitting the same place that YA was in the past.
And, you know, if people have only read ACOTAR, they might not know that there are genres of romantasy that are not as explicit. So it's not necessarily that like readers of all ages are like, it's not that 13-year-olds are like reading explicit sex scenes. Although, again, like
I mean,
13-year-olds have always stolen their mom's books and read, or their parents' books and read these sex scenes. Like it's like, this is not some, I don't know. Like, I love when people are like, can you imagine my 13-year-old reading this? And then you think back, if you actually think in your mind and you're like, here's the books that I stole when I was babysitting. And here's like this book that I made sure my mom didn't know I was reading when I was 13. Like,
yeah, like how old was I when I read The Mists of Avalon? Probably 13.
I know, right? Okay, next question. Oh my gosh, Melody really wants this answer because she hates this phenomenon. This comes from Emily.
I've noticed a trend in publishing lately that I don't have a name for. It's books that are clearly marketed at particular fandoms with either the titles or the pen names of the authors. For example, Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez, clearly aimed at the Swifties, or The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore, clearly aimed at fans of Gilmore Girls. As a fan of both Gilmore Girls and Taylor Swift, I personally find these overt references unappealing, but maybe I'm missing out. But my question is, how does this work in terms of copyright infringement and marketing? Is this just allowed, or do the owners of the original intellectual property get a say? Also, are these types of books openly requested by publishing houses? And who in marketing decides which fandoms they are going to produce these works for?
Great question. Melody, can you first tell us why this annoys you?
It just seems like such a pointless cash grab. Like, it almost seems like Pavlovian marketing where they're like, if we titled this book Cruel Summer, all the Swifties will buy it, when it has like nothing to do with Taylor Swift at all. I see these books all the time. And as, you know, a diehard Swiftie and a diehard reader, I'm like, this should be for me, and it just pisses me off.
Well, and it's also just kind of like condescending almost.
It's condescending and it's lazy. Yeah. Come up with your own turn of phrase.
Yeah.
I think this is mostly just marketing, partially because the growth of the romance market and indie publishing means that there's a lot more competition for attention in this space. And so people are just desperate to figure out like how they can make their books stand out in the market. And book publishing moves so slowly that they're only going to do this with art and artists with significant fandoms that won't just disappear in 2 years, like in the time it takes them to actually get this book out. So that's part of why you're seeing a lot of Taylor Swift related ones, because like people know people will still like Taylor Swift in 2 years. And the demographic really aligns with the demographic they're aiming for with these books, right? Like there's a lot of crossover between Swifties and rom-com readers. So I think it's a lot of that, but publishers do create their own IP projects. Like if you think about book packagers like Alloy Entertainment, who created Gossip Girl and Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. So they are sometimes packaging books to fit like the desires of these existing fan bases for things like Gilmore Girls and creating content for them because they're not seeing it in the market and they're trying to meet the needs of fans who they think will be fans of this type of novel.
Yeah. And I will say that like, say you'll remember me, like that phrase is not copyrighted.
No, and it's always like the new Annabelle Monaghan book is called It's a Love
Story. I just read that. But there is literally a book called Cruel Summer. And I'm like, that's the name of a song. It's not just like a lyric. How is that allowed?
No, but like, I mean, Cruel Summer was also, hold on.
Yeah, it's a different song too.
Yeah, it's a different song. It's a song by Bananarama.
Oh, yes, of course. Maybe it's for the Bananarama fans. Who are we
no, but say? Like I'm just saying like that, like it's a phrase almost, right? Like, and that's where Taylor was also picking it up from. So it's not like you can use that phrase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nothing's been like so specific.
And they're not like collaborating. Like this isn't like a cross promotion with the Gilmore Girls. They're just trying to like cross promote to the fans.
Yes. Well, and the Pumpkin Spice Cafe books have been hugely successful. They're so popular. I saw a Pumpkin Spice Cafe coloring book at the indie romance bookstore in Austin a couple weeks ago. I know.
This is so interesting to me. Okay, so let's talk about covers. This question comes from Catherine.
How has the focus on visuals changed romance publishing and reading, especially since they are drivers of book talk and have been financially holding up publishing? E-readers led to a rise in indie pubs, but hard copies make content.
Okay, so Alyssa, what are your thoughts on this in this current moment?
This is another one that like we could spend this entire podcast talking about. This is a rich text, but I think book talk creators are really very savvy about how they visually represent books. So if they read something on their Kindle, they'll superimpose the cover over their shoulder in the top left corner of their video. And so it's not stopping them from talking about books if they've only read them digitally, but they've all decked out their Kindles. They have stickers behind clear cases. They all have pop sockets on the back of their Kindles. I've been influenced. I have a pop socket on the back of my Kindle now. I love it. I don't think I could go back. They have fancy page turners. So there's definitely more of a visual emphasis in terms of personalizing your Kindle than there has been in the past. Yeah. And as someone who visits a lot of indie romance bookstores, they are all doing a very brisk sticker business. Like they're selling so many romance-themed stickers for people's Kindles and water bottles and laptops and everything else. And I think that's one of the big changes we've seen is like being a reader is an identity in a way that you can represent not just with your books, but other places. Like I was at Target yesterday and they had a pop socket that said Hot Girls Read, which I thought was fascinating that has crossed over to Target. But We're also seeing like outside of the ebooks, it's like you either have a book that doesn't exist for you at all, it's ephemeral, it's on your Kindle, or you have like the most special edition version of the books that you love, as we're seeing this rise of book collector culture. So it's driven by things like sprayed edges, illustrated special editions. But another way creators and authors are leveraging the visual nature of social media is there's been this huge rise in fan art to promote romance. So authors now commission artists to create illustrations of their characters to share with their readers. It's a huge part of the marketing process. Good fan art can make a book. And often authors are posting fan art of the characters before the book has even been released.
Yeah, because it allows you to like imagine them. And like I think back on old school like Harlequin romance bodice ripper covers. That was a means of you like imagining who that protagonist was.
And now we've moved to cartoon covers, but because of that, there's this also shift back towards the sort of bodice ripper inspired like clinch covers in these fan art illustrations that are also everywhere.
Yes. But I do think that that's really interesting. My friend Jason Diamond, who we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, he has a new fiction book coming out, and he's a very like physical culture nerd, and he commissioned artist friends of his to make different like posters and stuff like that, just for mostly like for his own enjoyment. But I also think it's very effective.
It is.
And his cover, it's about like the mob in Chicago, and his cover very much evokes like the original Godfather cover.
Oh, I love that.
And so I think that we're seeing that in like different genres too. That like right now we're going like think about like Lena Dunham, the cover of Lena Dunham's book, and how that was one of the first to like go back and evoke this like 70s, 80s Tom Wolfe, like that style. But I think even though we're seeing the aesthetics of genre fiction go in a different direction, you're seeing it in literary fiction in different ways too.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because in romance especially, a lot of romances will be released with multiple different covers if you're indie publishing, that you can choose which cover you want. So there's like a traditional cartoon cover, but then there will be something like they call it a discrete cover, sort of like in the style of 50 Shades of Grey, where there's nothing on the cover that indicates it's a romance novel. It might just be like flowers with the title, or something that's like totally anonymous if you're not interested in having your books advertised that they're romances.
And Alyssa, I'm blanking on the name. What's the publishing house that's like doing romances and they have like very...
Oh, it's 831 Stories.
Yes. So their style too. Can you describe that for listeners? We'll put a cover in the show notes.
Yeah, all of their covers are following the same template, and they're both two colors, usually like jewel tones, and they're very geometric. There was actually, I think, a Publishers Weekly article about this that we can find the link to like a month ago, because there's like the numbers 8, 3, and 1 are like somehow visually represented in the geometry of these covers, but they're fully just like colors and text. They are not representative at all.
They also are kind of marketed as like
highbrow,
a different sort of romance.
Yes.
Yeah.
You will find them at your snobby indie bookstore that doesn't carry any other romance typically.
Oh, and then like they also though are aesthetically pleasing on the shelf.
They are. And they have a whole line of merchandise related to romance that's been doing very well for them as at the same time. Like they have hats that say things like, you know, competence porn or something like that related to romance tropes.
Wow. It's fascinating.
It is.
And very savvy, and also makes me feel weird inside.
It's exactly how I feel about it.
This episode of the Culture Study Podcast is brought to you by Graza. It's summer, my favorite season, and I have been making so many elaborate salads. After we came back from Greece, both Charlie and I were just craving the monster Greek salads that they make there, where the only dressing you put on top is some oregano and then just a ton of olive oil. What did I use? The drizzle from Graza, and it was amazing. There's also the sizzle, which I use every day whenever I'm like, I don't know, anything that I'm sauteing some vegetables, whatever. And it's an everyday cooking oil for roasting, marinating, etc., etc. And then there's the frizzle, which has a smoke point of 490 degrees. You can use it for grilling. You can use it for frying or crisping. I use it to crisp my tofu. All of the Graza olive oils come from one olive varietal from one region. No mysterious blends. That means a traceable, fresher product without mixing in any lower grade or unknown oils. And they also come in these super fun squeeze bottles, which I love. Like they just make, I don't know. Like I'm like, oh, now I'm using my olive oil instead of like, oh, now I'm using this giant thing of olive oil that's like covered in oil that's gross. I love it. Right now, you can get 10% off your first order on Graza's site, and I personally suggest grabbing the trio. That's all 3 squeezy bottles, the sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle, so you're set for every style of cooking. Head to graza.co and use culture to get 10% off the trio, which includes, again, the sizzle, the frizzle, and the drizzle, and get cooking your next chef quality meal. Our next question is about a specific author and a broader trend. This question comes from Nikki.
My husband is a huge Brandon Sanderson guy, and it feels like he has so many projects in the pipeline, but introduces them as Kickstarters every single time. Brandon Sanderson has a TV show on Amazon and is a huge, well-known author, but it feels like cash grab after cash grab. My husband does not see it this way. Am I just a grump about this?
So I had to Google Brandon Sanderson, and I just love when I find out that there's something that is so tremendously popular and has given so many people pleasure that I had no idea about, because it's just like the world is vast.
Yes.
There's so much going on. So can you do a quick explanation of who Brandon Sanderson is first?
Yes, Brandon Sanderson is an incredibly prolific fantasy novelist. Like, he is putting out so many books per year, and people love all of them. He is like the straight fantasy version of Sarah J. Maas, right? Like, they're operating in a very similar space, but he is somehow even more prolific than her. And he has carved out this interesting space for himself where, because he is so popular, he has been able to figure out a way to operate outside of traditional publishing and sell directly to his readers. So he's basically indie publishing on a grand scale. He's also still traditionally published, but he has these projects that he does himself that allow him to try different things and be more creative than he might be able to be at a traditional publisher, where there's a lot more structure and more limitations. And obviously, I think it's important that traditional publishing continues to exist, but it's often people operating outside of the system that force them to make changes to the way they do things or think differently about how they're selling things to readers. And an author with the resources of a Brandon Sanderson trying and succeeding at new ways of monetizing his writing also provides a resource for indie authors who don't have that level of readership or money to see how he's doing it, try it, and see what works for them. So I think across the board,
normalize that.
Yeah.
Have that be like a way that people, like, Sanderson is training readers that this is a way to consume fiction.
And because he's such a trusted author, they're willing to take that leap with him. And then once they do it with him, they might branch out to other indie authors who they don't know as well. So I think it's interesting. And across the board, we're seeing a lot of indie authors find new ways to sell their work. And like, that's good, especially like the farther people are able to break out of the really restrictive Amazon ecosystem with their indie publishing. That's great, because right now a lot of it is very much tied to Kindle Unlimited in a way that means that they can't separate their livelihoods from Amazon.
Right. And like, most authors that I know can't only write, right? Like that is not their only job. And so what if there was a way for it to be your only job? So he's done a number of Kickstarters. Melody did some research for us. One in 2020 was for the leather-bound edition of The Way of Kings, and he raised $6.7 million for that one. And then in 2022, he did a Kickstarter to self-publish for secret novels that he'd written, and he raised close to $42 million. And then last year, he partnered with a game company to develop a tabletop role-playing game based on his mythical universe, and they raised $14.6 million. So like, that's just I wanted those numbers in there as like a testament. Like, we're not talking about like he raised $400,000. Like,
no, he
$42 million.
A publisher unto himself. And it would be interesting to see if he would leverage that power for other authors who maybe don't have those opportunities. But I recommend, there's an interesting article about his, like, he built himself like a writing bunker. Like, that's the level of money he is playing with here. People love him.
It reminds me somewhat of Substack, in that, like, when people make a product that enough people want, and if you've taught them that, like, yes, it's normal to pay someone $5 a month, or Patreon, right? Like, it's just a slightly different version of Patreon. But then, like, I always talk with other newsletter writers who are like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if we just did this all together, right? And then we're like, oh, that would be a magazine.
Yes, we're just
right?
reinventing.
So, like, you're like, like Brandon Sanderson, it's like, oh, what if he brought other people in? And you're like, and then it would be a publishing house. Like this, you eventually circle back to these more traditional means, but I have a different person at the top. Let's see. Oh, I love this one. This one is so Book Talk specific, and it is so up your alley. And this comes from Jordan.
I have a question for anyone that's plugged into Book Talk. How on earth did Jacqueline Hartman's novel, I Who Have Never Known Men, go viral? I was thrilled to see it, but also very surprised since I generally associate Book Talk with romantasy. But that could be my Bookstagram biases speaking.
Okay, so this book came out in 1995. The author is Belgian. It was originally published in French, and like there was a translation, I think, in the late 90s or early 2000s in English, but like was not.
It did nothing.
And I first heard of it during the last culture study, what are you reading thread. A bunch of people were reading it, and I was like, oh, is this a cool new book? And people are like, I read that too. How my book club read it. My book club read it. Like, where is that coming from? And someone said Book Talk, and I love how many people had no idea that they were reading this book from 1995 because of Book Talk.
Yeah, it's not just romantasy. Every day. That's what I tell people. There are tons of lit fic readers on Book Talk, and this is a perfect example of that because they made this book. It has sold hundreds of thousands of copies at this point.
Wow.
The new translation was released in English in 2022, was picked up by a very small press called Transit, and it went viral when Book Talkers started talking about it. We think, no one can totally pinpoint the exact video, but we think partially because of Women in Translation Month. They were posting Women in Translation Month content in August 2023. One of the people who posted about it was Lauren Louise, who was like one of the most popular lit fic Book Talk creators. And it also, when I was doing some research, took off on Reddit about the exact same time. So it seems like possibly there was some parallel Reddit readers discovering this book and Book Talkers discovering this book at the same time. It's about 40 women who are kept in a cage underground and then escape into a dystopian world. So I think one reason it's done so well is because it's a book that's both easy to describe and sparks discussion.
Yeah.
I saw it in a TikTok roundup about, quote, bleak books that will have you spiraling.
Also, you forgot to mention everything else that's happening in the world like that.
Yes, it's very timely.
And I've seen it compared.
And it's short.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's short too. I've seen it compared in some ways to The Handmaid's Tale, even though it's not. It's not similar. Like,
no, I think just the impact of the Handmaid's Tale TV show cannot be overstated. I feel like we're seeing a lot of that in a lot of the books that are going viral in the past 5 years. Like everyone wants to comp to The Handmaid's Tale.
Which is fascinating because I totally noped out of there in season 2. Like it was just way too much, even though I was a huge, huge original fan of the novel. But I do think that that is a testament to like people wanting to see these scenarios played out. And I love too that you point like it's some of it's the length, some of it's the discussion. It's a great book to talk to other people about, which is essentially word of mouth marketing, right? Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, everyone, I'm going to read it. Have you read it?
Yeah, I need to. I haven't read it yet. I need to. I think it has a lot of crossover appeal too, because several creators who typically recommend more commercial fiction on Book Talk have read and loved it. So it has sort of breached containment from just the like weird girl lit Book Talk influencers to sort of a broader set of them.
Yeah. Our last question before the AAA segment is about fan fiction, and we've done a whole episode on this, so go back in the archives if you want to hear specifically about stuff that's happening in fan fiction right now, but I want to hear about the pipeline, and this question comes from Emma.
I'm really curious about the fan fiction to book talk pipeline from a publisher's perspective. It's a super popular trend, and admittedly, I've gotten back into fan fiction now in my 30s because of book talk. And a lot of it is really good, especially as romantasy goes. Do publishers stock Book Talk and read Archive of Our Own or AO3, one of the most popular fan fiction websites? to find the fanfics they want to have authors rewrite to be published without the IP issues? How does this all work, especially from a marketing standpoint, given potential sensitivities with the original work that these books are based on? One example is Sen Lin Yu's upcoming Alchemized, which is based on Manacled. This is a Harry Potter fan fiction, but I know there are many other examples from Star Wars fan fiction to One Direction fan fiction that books and movies have been made based on.
How do we want to approach this? Alyssa, do you stalk Book Talk and read AO3 to find fanfics?
I mean, yes. A big part of my job is stalking Book Talk to see what's going viral, right? But the fan fiction to publishing pipeline has been strong in romance for at least the past 15 years. Like, this isn't a new phenomenon because 50 Shades of Grey was Twilight fan fiction. It ushered in a whole era of Twilight fan fiction romances that brought us an entire generation of popular romance novelists like Christina Lauren. They came from Twilight fan fiction. The next big wave of romance authors was from the Raylo fandom in 2020. That brought us current icon of the genre, Allie Hazelwood. So there's like a ton of romance authors who have come from fan fiction. It's been a fertile breeding ground for like new romance stories. And now we're in this quote unquote Dramini era, which is a lot more complicated for a number of reasons. These stories hew much closer to the original works they're adapting, and they're from IP that can't be separated from its bigoted creator.
Yes.
But publishers are already on the hunt for the next pairing or fandom that can generate a new wave of romance. And I literally started reading fan fiction because at my first publishing job in 2011, my boss told me to read fan fiction.
Huh. What are you seeing as like a possibility, like a pairing that is hot right now?
Well, I mean, my personal taste is probably not what's going to be the next thing, but I'm addicted to the Pit fan fiction.
I've heard about this.
It's so good. It's people being really good at their jobs, which is the ultimate fantasy right now in a high stakes environment. And there's so many different doctors on the Pit. There's so many potential pairings. But yeah, there's really exciting to me things happening in that space. And now I would love to find like a medical romance, which is something that I don't think I've ever read.
Oh, interesting. Alyssa, what if they had like a really good like academia, like leaving academia?
Oh, yes. I mean, that's probably something that you can find fan fiction about because a lot of the people writing fan fiction are probably people who are sad about leaving academia.
Oh, so good.
I typically say that romance trends start in fan fiction, work their way up to indie published works, and then into traditionally published novels because fan fiction can move so much more quickly. And it's being written serially, like a chapter a week. So they're closer to the ground in terms of what people want to read right now. And so I think part of the reason why publishers like this is because a fan fiction conversion is a way that they can move faster to get ahead of the trends. Because if you're like picking up a work that's already been written, you can sort of cut down the timeline it takes to get it to market. And it's already been proven that it's something people like. So I do think there's something not just about there's really interesting, good writing happening in fan fiction, but it's about trends and it's about speed to market. And I think that's why we're seeing an acceleration of these conversions happening because with Book Talk, there's like the trend cycle has really increased its speed. And so they're having to try new things to keep up.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting. And I think that like, again, where we're seeing this like stratification, like the cycle seems to be getting faster and faster with like romantasy and like attention being directed to different authors and different series and that sort of thing. And then at the same time, I just know from personal experience, like the timeline on nonfiction, like stuff that does not sell as well.
Yeah.
Like my book.
It's
like,
so slow.
It's like slowing even more, right?
Yeah.
Like the allocation of resources is not, it's working differently. But I'm really excited for today's Ask Ann Anything. Can you stick around and talk to us about book clubs?
Of course.
Okay. So this is a question that I think a lot of culture study readers and listeners have been grappling with or have grappled with in the past. So I'm really excited to talk about it. And if you're not yet a paid subscriber and you want advice on starting and maintaining a good book club, along with how to handle drama or criticism along the way, head to culturestudypod.substack.com and sign up. So, Alyssa, where can people find you if they want to hear more from you?
People can find me at romancingthephone.substack.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us and answering all of our weird questions. It's just been a delight.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to the Culture Study Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We have so many great episodes in the works, and I promise you don't want to miss any of them. If you want to suggest a topic, ask a question about the culture that surrounds you, or submit a question for our subscriber-only advice time segment, check the show notes for a link to our Substack. If you want to support the show and get bonus content, head to culturestudypod.substack.com. The Culture Study Podcast is produced by me, Anne Helen Peterson, and Melody Rowell. Our music is by Poddington Bear. You can find me on Instagram at Anne Helen Peterson, Melody at Melodious47, and the show at Culture Study Pod. Thank you so much for your support.